Hello, everyone. This is Joel Clark, creator of Lone Wolf Fist, and hopefully you have been kind of funneled here by one of my many efforts to get your attention for my upcoming Kickstarter, Acid and Steel. So, if that's the case, you're getting a little curious about the game. You're like, well, what is Lone Wolf Fist all about? Well, I wanted to kind of show you what you can expect from the game, like what it plays like, how to make characters, why it's fun, that kind of stuff. I worked on this game for about 5 or 6 years, and I released it via Kickstarter, and now I'm releasing the first supplement. I'm really happy with the system, and it has consistently proven to be an absolute blast in play, and it offers something very different from a lot of other games you might be used to. Now, I'm not going to compare to those games directly. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what this game does and let you judge for yourself. So, starting off very, very simply, I think that whenever I encounter a new system, the first thing I always look at isn't the rules or the what is an RPG section or any of that stuff. It's just the character sheet. The first thing I look at is always the character sheet. And I do that because I kind of want to get a feel for what my interaction point with the system is. Uh, if I'm a player or if I'm a GM, this is kind of like looking at the controller for a new video game system. You kind of need to know what buttons you're going to be pushing, right? This is the filter between you and the shared imagined universe. So here we've got one of my pre-gens from the free intro adventure, which, by the way, the intro adventure is 100% free. It shows you how to play the game and gives you pre-generated characters. It is a pretty good bargain at $0.00. And if you're interested in the game, it's a very brief little read. So I highly recommend it after this video. But this guy is Hero. I named him Hero because back when I was a kid and I was watching the anime that would eventually inspire this game, I watched one called Venus Wars on the Sci-Fi Channel, and the hero's name was Hero, and I thought that was the funniest thing ever. That was just really funny to like 8-year-old me. Or actually, I might have been a little bit older, but yeah, it's still funny. All right, so what do we got on this character sheet? Let's break down the anatomy a little bit to kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at. And this is actually not a standard character sheet. A standard character sheet has a few more boxes here and a few different things. This is the here's what you're going to be using at the table for this one shot intro adventure. Says this is a slightly edited character sheet, but it otherwise has the elements where you're going to find them. So there's a lot going on here. Let's go through the obvious ones. Your character's name is here, player's name is here. Notice I leave it blank so you can write in your own name. So that's fun. Then you have archetype and clan. Okay, well, this is kind of like a class. It's where your stats are. So like if you can kind of think of enlightened as more or less the wizard class. Of course, a wizard in a kung fu game is clearly way more buff than a wizard in your typical like Western style fantasy games. Enlightened doesn't so much mean that you use more magic; it means you have more magic go-go juice. So that's these guys over here. Your effort, which is kind of like your strength and toughness and speed and all that stuff, is a little bit lower. You're not as outgoing. You're not as capable in the physical realm. You're still pretty damn capable. 4 is a pretty good amount of dice to be rolling. But you're lower than the standard, which is 5, and then the stronger heroes have higher numbers. Let me show you some of those guys. So there's another enlightened hero. And then here we have more cunning hero. This guy's more intellectual and less spiritual, but he still has a foot in the real world. So he's got a little more effort. And then if we scroll on down here, you've got good old Nameless from the Brotherhood of Freaks. This guy has yet to earn a name, but he is on the way to, because he is a very big buff dude with lots of dice to roll. So, and again, I will get to that and the specifics of that in a tick. Let's change this size a little bit. Here we go. So yeah, that's what the archetype is. It's more or less your class. And this isn't one of those games where class is a permeable membrane and you can switch tracks and multi-class. You just choose one and go. It's more or less your strategic preference in the game. Enlightened heroes are more. They have more magic go-go juice, so they can use more of their magic kung fu. But as a trade-off to that, they have less dice to roll and less health, so they're a little more fragile. And again, you guys get what's going on here. They also do have more aura. Aura and health are your 2 HP tracks. Aura is the freebies. You can take damage to this, no big deal. Health is a bit more of a big deal. Once you take damage to health, you get wounds, which turn into these things called imbalances. I'll get into that in a minute, but yeah, to break it down very simply, aura is how much of a magical shield you have, and then health is how much of a beating you can take before you die. The clan, there are 7 clans. Oh gosh, these are a little bit more challenging. Not everyone's played Vampire the Masquerade or Legend of the Five Rings, but in those, your choice of clan matters a lot. It's more like your political allegiance, and also kind of like your family and background and where you came from. That's what the clans are here. They give you access to different kinds of magic kung fu that are specific to them, and they also give you a starting equipment package, and they also give you kind of a morality, and you gain XP by doing heroic deeds in this game. So they give you your own set of heroic deeds you can do to gain XP. So this guy gets XP when he does certain things, like defend certain holy shrines and things like that from his clan that other characters wouldn't get. So that's fun. Let's go. Let's stay to the core capabilities here. So right here is your effort. This is the core stat of the game. It's kind of like your whole stat block rolled into a single set of dice. So the more dice you have to roll, the more strong and tough and fast and smart and sneaky and observant and everything you are. You roll these as a pool of d10s, which I'm going to demonstrate. Actually, you know what? This would be a very useful thing to demonstrate to you. Let's do that. Let's just get a good old dice roller and kind of give you an idea. So let's get that out of there. So with this guy, he rolls 4d10. So let's roll 4d10 real quick. Okay, this is actually a great roll. All right, so when you roll dice in this is how you roll your effort. You just pick them up and roll them when you want to take an action. And what you're looking for is these. You look for matching numbers. These are called sets. And the more dice are in a set, the higher its rank. Your rank is equal to the dice in the set. So this is a set of rank 2, right? The facing of the set is the die number. This number on the front facing of the die. So this is a rank 2 facing 1 set. You would read this as 21. The rank is the tens column, the facing is the ones column. So 2 dice of facing 1 are 21. Easy. If you didn't have that, let's say that rolled kind of crappy, and you only had like this guy and that was your best one, and you just had a single die, that is a rank 1 set with facing 5. So in that case, that would be 15. That's also something you can use, but you like these guys. So and intuitively you can kind of figure out, even if you haven't done the math on this, and the math is kind of complicated, honestly, or at least it is for my stupid brain. Some role-playing gamers are much, much smarter than me, and they're like, oh, I know exactly how this math works, and so you have a really good, thorough understanding of it. For me, not so much. Math is not my strong suit, so I had to look up the mathematics behind this to figure it out. Again, though, intuitively, it makes sense that if you have less dice, you are less likely to get sets, and if you have more dice, you're more likely to get sets as well. Like conversely. It also is intuitively correct that you will more likely see multiple small sets before you see large sets, right? So if this guy had like a pile of dice, like this, you rolled them all like that, like you're really likely to see like here's a nice chunky set that's a set of 3. Those are good. But then you have these kind of smaller sets. You got 2 7s and 2 9s, and then a couple of singletons there, right? So this is a pretty decent roll, but it's a pretty common roll too, where you get multiple small sets with some standouts that are a little bit larger, and it's unlikely to get like a set of like 5. It's not unheard of, but I rarely see sets get higher than 4, and the math bears that out. Like, yeah, here's another set of 3. Here's a set of 2. Here's a set of 3. That's a really sexy roll. That's great. But yeah, for this fella, he doesn't have that many dice to roll. He's got a little 4. So it's pretty common, yeah, that you'll get a roll like this where you don't really have any sets. So you're just kind of stuck with your highest number. So the way that works is you, just like in most games, you get a movement and an attack every single round. And an action is not even necessarily an attack. So that can be with a single die, a rank 1 set. If you want to do multiple things, though, if you want to say like move and attack again, that requires sets. So let me give you an example of that. Let me see if I can roll a set for you. Yeah, here we go. So with this one, his primary attack. Oh, and by the way, you read tens as 0, so this is actually a crappy roll. This is the lowest you can get. It goes from 0 to 9. So this would be a rank 1 facing 0. So this would be a 10. Ouch, lowest possible die. This is what you want to attack with. So let's say this guy wants to throw 2 attacks. He's got 2 hands. He's going to throw 2 attacks. So he throws his 8. That turns into an 18. That's a pretty decent attack. And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to hit him again with a roundhouse kick. Boom. This set right here allows him to do that. So now he can do a flurry of attacks, a punch, and then a roundhouse at 24. So that's pretty dangerous. You'll also note an interesting little mathematical thing is that the leap between those actual numbers isn't that huge, despite the fact that this is considerably harder to achieve. So that actually kind of curbs down how much damage you can do to people because you defend in this exact same way. Like, say I was on the receiving end of an ass kicking and someone else was throwing attacks at me, I would choose dice to defend with. Like, okay, he's gonna throw a pretty nasty 24 at me. I don't want to use my 24. I'll use an 18. You simply subtract the attack number from the defense number. If there's a positive number, that's damage. How do you deal with damage? Aura. Um, each one of these aura has 10 hit points in it, and so they can just suck that right up. So, 24 minus 18 is 6. I could soak 6 damage right into here and have 14 aura left. Pretty decent. Like, so even in a pretty close fight, this guy's not really taking much damage. That's one of those attacks like in Dragon Ball Z where they whack you and it's the dust clears and you're totally unharmed. That's what aura is all about. Now, if they were really mean, and I was really messed up, like let's say they did that twice, and I'm like, oh crap, they're throwing a 30 at me. That's not good. And I'm like, oh god, this is all I have left to defend with. Well, I could take 16 damage. That's a little more significant, you know. Now, again, I could still soak that up with Aura, but if they keep hammering me like that, they're going to start damaging my health. Health also have 10 hit points each, but as soon as this fills up with 10 damage, I take an imbalance. And imbalances are lingering injuries that take a long time to heal, and they have statistical influences on combat. They either disable one of your limbs, or they give you a deadly blow to your head and core. This is significant because your magic kung fu here requires you to use certain limbs. Like, for example, your lightning fist requires you to have an arm functional. Well, if both of your arms have been heavily injured, you might not be able to use them. Um, so you wouldn't have access to that anymore. So that's a really big deal. So you'll note I've only got 4 health. Most of the other, I think all of the other character archetypes have more, so they can take more of a beating, but they're still dealing with imbalances. So the Enlightened is a pretty strong archetype, even though it seems kind of weak at first, because you only have 4 effort there. Because not only do you have that Oro, as you saw, which keeps you safe, but you also have these guys. Okay, so what's going on here? What's a chakra? And I'm doing chakra prior to focus because I've got an enlightened hero here, but we're going to get to this guy too, don't worry. So chakra is really cool. This is where you get your magic go-go juice. You'll notice there are 7. They have names. Every being with a soul has all 7 of these things. And mystical martial artists, aka lone wolf fists, learn how to tap into them and get power. Again, going back to Dragon Ball Z, you use these and you power up and you got the burning halo of energy around you and there's like a roar of power, and this gives you access to your magic martial arts. So mystical martial arts are learned through the techniques here. um let's see here, what's a good one? Lightning, actually, let's just go back to lightning fist. Lightning fist is a really good one. So what's the anatomy of one of these guys? I'm just gonna throw my keyboard around here. All right, what's the anatomy of a technique? All right, so this is a pretty standard one. You've got the name, Lightning Fist, the type, there's attack, defense, mudra, and balance. So attack is only used offensively, defense is only used defensively, balance can be used for either, and a mudra is more like a magic spell. It's less like just an attack or a defense, and it's more like it's breathing fire is generally a mudra. I mean, you could call that an attack, and it very much can be, but you could also reasonably defend yourself with fire, or do all kinds of weird, zany, non-attack stuff with it. So that's what's going on with the types. These sort of restrict how you can use the power, or define how you can use the power. The requirements are the physical body parts you need to use this. Some of them are a little more esoteric. Notice this requires an awakened chakra. Um, Just like your physical body, your chakra can be injured. Usually, it requires an attack on your soul, aka some kind of curse or a magical attack to injure them. But yeah, this is you've got 7 of them, so it's kind of hard to curse all of them. You're generally going to have access to the pressure point strike. It's not impossible that you get this shut off because an awakened chakra is one of these dudes. You notice that these guys don't have numbers on them. These are slumbering chakra. So awakened, sleepy. So it's not impossible that you take injuries from a previous battle to your most to your awakened chakra so that you can't have access to this in early rounds because you have to activate more of them. So it's not like this is not a consideration. It's just generally less of a consideration than, oh, my arm is. I've only got 2 arms, right? Barring unforeseen circumstances that allow me to spider grow some more. So yeah, with this one, this is a little more fragile in terms of how it could be shut off. But that's what the requirements are. Cost is the cost in prana. Prana is what's generated by your chakra, so that's these guys right here. And you'll note you have a pool of prana right next. This should probably say prana pool, but this these are the chakra. They make the prana. The prana goes in here. This 6 is composed of this 3 and this 3. This is the base amount of prana that you simply have access to just as naturally as breathing. This secondary one, so this is the pool and this is the recovery stat. All of your chakra open with this recovery stat. This is what happens in combat. Once your dander is up and you've got your magical flowing aura, this is how much they give you. This is how much you start with. This is how much you recover per round. So 3 and 3 is 6. You have 6 prana, which is a lot, by the way, for a starting character, to access your magic either outside of combat or in the early rounds, like the very first round of combat. In later rounds, this pool stat is going to fluctuate enormously because all of your costs come out of there. And you're consistently getting 12 prana minimum per round dumped into this. You also awaken another chakra at the end of every round automatically as your body tries to defend itself from fighting, or from danger. So every round, another one of these 6s is going to pop open at your discretion. Now, that gives you a lot of power. So at the end of the first round, you've got 6 plus 6 plus 6, so 18 prana coming in. That's tremendous, right? The costs on these is very low. So you could use a whole lot of this lightning fist in later rounds or access these far more powerful attacks as well. But the drawback of that, well, there's a couple of drawbacks, but the biggest drawback of that is that whenever you're blazing with energy like that, it's called a prana flare, and it attracts a lot of attention. This setting is a post-apocalyptic one, and in addition to rival martial artists and armies, there's monsters and demons and all, even just like, sentient curses and things like that, that look for these prana flares and seek you out to make your life hell. So you have to ask yourself at the end of a round, like, okay, do I want access to huge amounts of magic so I can beat this challenge in front of me, with the very notable risk that I'm going to draw more unwanted attention later. So this is a powerful consideration. However, generally, I don't see people worrying about that because it's kind of a gonzo game, so they blaze right up. But let's get back to it. So the cost is in prana, and you notice that you actually have a lot of prana with the Lightning Hero starting off, so you can unleash this a lot. Um, so this kind of tells you how this manifests. Rank is the same thing as buying dice. So, and I want to demonstrate this for you because a lot of people kind of fall off right here. This is the facing range, and this is the rank. What this means is for this cost in prana, you can buy a die of any of these facings. So let me show you what that looks like in play. So you roll your effort, and that sticks around for the whole turn. Okay, I've got some 3s and 5s. This is a pretty sexy roll. Getting 2 sets of 2 means I've got lots and lots of cool options there. So with this guy, with my lightning fist, I can buy another die of facing 5. So let's see if I can get another 5 here. This would have been easier if I just had a picture of one of these things. Oh, actually, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's get a little creative here, folks. There we go. There we go. That's good. Beautiful. Okay, so I love the snip tool, by the way. I use it constantly. So here we go. So now, if I need another die, like say this one right here, I can just buy it. So this rank 2 I've got here, I can increase to a rank 3 and use it for an attack, specifically this attack, the Lightning Fist. All right, so that's how that works. Now, I don't have to do that. For example, I have the ability to use 2 bonus actions here, so if I want to do an additional action, I can just buy a single die, say this is my 1 die action this turn, and use it just with a rank 1, a facing 5. I can even buy a higher facing if I wanted to. So if I wanted to make it a facing 8, I could. I could be like, oh, this is an 8. Boom, I'll make that an 8. So yeah, this that's what that does. It lets you buy more dice and modify your actions or create new actions. Now, it's only rank 1. So you only get 1 rank 1 action per turn. So generally what you will do with Lightning Fist is you will purchase an additional die to modify an existing action. That's what that's for. Okay? That's how that works. There's a lot of flexibility in that, so it can be a little difficult to wrap your mind around, but this is basically just extending your option range with what you can do for actions. Now, the effect is how the attack manifests. In this case, it's very straightforward. This is just a fast, cheap punch. Cost 2 is like 3 is pretty much the standard for this level of technique. So cost 2 makes it very, very cheap. As a matter of fact, I think, don't we have 6? Yeah, we could do 3 of these a turn if we had enough stuff. So again, I want to make sure I'm making this clear. You are purchasing dice with the technique. So in addition to spending 2 prana and creating this nice chunky rank 3 attack, you could spend 4 prana, do this twice, and then pair it off with these. So instead of 1 really powerful rank 3, I could do 2 rank 2 attacks. So this would be a 35, and the 2 rank 2s would both be 25s. But 25 and 25 equals 50. So if they have no defense, that's the deadlier option, is you just slam them over and over with cheaper attacks. So there's a lot of different ways this can manifest, and it's incumbent on you as a player to think strategically about how you're going to use your resources. So that's one of the things that's very unique about this game. Most games don't have that. Most games are just like, okay, what did you roll? Okay, your thing happens. With this, you have to ask the what do you roll at the very beginning of the round, and then the question becomes, how do you make the best use of those resources in a changing environment? And it's not clear from round to round, so you really got to use your noodle with that stuff. This is very engaging, by the way, and I see a lot of players who spend a pretty good amount of time on their turns because they're going through their options. And another thing I see is that players will often involve the rest of the table in this, so it's not just them sitting there looking up a spell like you'd see in a lot of other games. They're looking at their options very transparently as a team with the rest of the table. This is wonderfully collaborative, by the way, and is one of the biggest single draws of this game. So I wanted to make sure I was bringing all this to your attention because I'm trying to sell you on my game here. So that's, Anyway, so here's another place where people fall off a lot. This is the skill. All right. So now that we've gone over all that, this is the skills. Skills give you an alternative use of a technique entirely. How do those alternative uses work? That's a great question. And as a matter of fact, it's a question that reminds me that I really should have brought up. I really should have brought up the. Where are you? Yeah, the GM screen. There it is. All right. Let me give you the 1.2 version here. Oh, yeah, that's good. Jeez, it's been forever since I. Yeah, here we go. Let's swap this around a little bit. Here we go. Okay, great. So what the heck are you looking at here? So these right here, these are the 7 effect charts. When you do a non-combat thing, because combat's just comparative, right? It's your attack versus their defense. But if you use a skill, and you'll also notice that there's skills on the side here with an X and 1. I'll give you all that in just a second. So skills are the 7 non-combat things you can do in this game. You can take a power, endurance, agility, intellect, senses, heart, or spirit action. And how those manifest is dependent on the effect chart. These outline the rank in terms of yeah, here you go. The rank of the effect and then what that can accomplish. So let's see what this one is benefiting real quick. We'll give it a gander. What are you? You are agility. Okay, so let's say that you're not in the mood to throw a punch because someone's got a bunch of guns and you're far away from them and you just can't reach them. And you're like, okay, well, agility is good. Agility is my speed, so I could actually still use lightning fists to help me here. So I've got my rank 2. I got my 2 5s here, right? So that's pretty good. But I'm going to use it to increase my skill instead of punching. So now I buy my die, right? Oh, did I close that? What did I do with that? I lost my die. My little visual representation. Well, whatever. I buy my additional die, and I've got a rank 3 now. So now let's look at the GM screen. Let's go to agility. Here we go. Doesn't actually help me very much. 2 to 3 is actually the same rank. So this is not a very good example. But let's say, for the sake of argument, or a little bit better, and I got a set of 3, and I'm like, oh wait, you know what? Actually, let me look real quick because this is actually a good time to lead into these guys. Okay, so there's an X in spirit here. What does that mean? Okay, so this is to remind players what their 7 skills are, but the X is to give them a skill mastery. Mastery simply increases all uses of that skill by 1 rank. Easy peasy. So if I had this over in agility, it would increase my agility by 1 rank. So that would be useful. So let's assume through hook or crook I got up to a 5 here, and that this was the cutoff here. So this tells you what you can do in terms of acrobatics, perform jaw-dropping feats. It gives you how fast you can run in kilometers and miles per hour. And it gives you a benchmark for that. So this is as fast as a cheetah. Gives you an idea of what you can dodge. So someone's shooting at you, getting a rank 4 is fast enough to dodge a bullet. To give you an idea of cinematically what that can do. It also tells you how far you can leap and what kind of unfamiliar environments you can traverse and how well. So, like if you found yourself thrown into water, you could swim as well as a dolphin. If you were brachiating from trees, you would do so as well as whatever kind of monkey brachiates from trees. Gibbon? I don't know. I don't know much about monkeys, but yeah, you're in an unfamiliar and difficult to traverse environment. Suddenly, you can do that. So this gives you all kinds of different things you can do suddenly, and it you'll notice that they have these cutoffs every 2 ranks or so. Some individual ranks are very significant. 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 are all single rank jumps. These are all 2s, and then 13 to 14 or higher is a significant jump too. So all of your different skills have these effect charts. They give you this broad set of things that you can do with a given skill. So if I suddenly needed to go really, really, really fast, I could take this particular ability and using the exact same method, instead of increasing a punch, I can increase my speed. So that's what that does. And that every single technique more or less has a skill associated with it. So what this is, in every case, this is a secondary use of the skill. Instead of to increase an attack or defense or whatever, it simply increases an ability. And this is very important because the higher degrees of here, these ones and these ones, require very powerful techniques to access. Um, you can get a higher result than 11 without the use of a master level technique, but you actually are capped right here on the effect chart for all effect charts unless you have a master level technique that specifically gives you access to that skill. So getting to this rank is incredibly hard. You have to have a very powerful magic to do that. They break that limit. And getting to here requires a supreme level technique, the most powerful ones in the game. So if you need to be able to run away from an atomic bomb as it's exploding next to you, this is what you're going to need. That is not an easy feat to do, right? If you need to fly at Mach 3 to outrun a fighter jet and literally fly then you need this. That is not an easy feat to pull off with just skill. It's possible, but it requires powerful magic, and all of these different effect charts are similarly capped. So that's what's going on there. That secondary ability, the skill ability, and all the techniques is a way for your character to behave in a superhuman method. It requires a lot of chakra, it requires a lot of prana, it requires access to powerful magic, which you do not have at character gen. But this is kind of that's kind of like one of the late game powers, and it also gives you again more versatility and more ways to use your magic. Uh, so you have again more and more and more options. So that's what's going on with the skills. That's how those work. That's how the chakra and prana work. That's how the technique works. What's up with focus? Okay, so at the end of every round, whatever dice you haven't used just get discarded, unless you have a focus slot, or just a focus is what I often call these. But they're slots that you can store things in. You can store a couple of different things in them. The most common use is that you can store a single die. So let's say you get a really nice roll, and you're like, okay, well that doesn't do me much good now. Let me just re-roll these real quick. Um, yeah, so this 9 is really nice. Now, let's say that you're not having a particularly active combat round. You don't really have a lot of ability to use offense with this roll. You could use your little fast punch and rabbit punch them a couple of times. You get the 5 and the 8 here, but you're kind of weighed down by this 10. This isn't doing you much good. So you're like, okay, I'll throw a couple of rabbit punches, but then I'm just gonna have this 9 sitting here. Like, what am I gonna do with this? I don't have any use for it this round. Well, lucky you, you've got a focus slot. You can take and keep this particular die. There we go. Let's take that die, and we can just keep it. We can keep it for next round. So I'm just gonna kind of scoot this guy. There we go. Yeah, there you go, buddy. Yeah, so this guy right here just goes right in your focus slot, and they stay on. So whenever you roll your dice next round, you're re-rolling all of them. You now have a 9 you can pair with this, right? So this is kind of interesting too. So suddenly you've got like, a set of zeros. This is kind of a crummy set. You got a 7 and a 3, but you've also got this extra die, right? You've also got this bad boy. So you actually have not only more options, but more resources for that second round. And this is going to be, of course, in addition to your newly beefed up prana from your newly beefed up chakras and all that. So that's what that's for. You can also store actions in this. Very commonly, if you want to, like, say, lift something really heavy up, one of these guys, that only lasts for a round. You have a burst of adrenaline, you lift something heavy up, and you do something with it. But if you're like, no, I've got to keep this building from collapsing, well, that's another thing where you can use your focus. You can put the whole action, whatever it is, into your focus slot, and you can just continue to hold up the building while you do other stuff. So that's another use of focus right there. So those are the two biggest things that focus do. And this isn't a focus based character, but the smart heroes are. So if you squeeze on down here to good old spiteful prince, very cunning little fellow, he's got 2 focus slots. He also has more health. Now you'll notice he has less in terms of magic, but oh well. So that's what's going on with that. Oh boy, let's you just see me incapable of scrolling with a mouse wheel here. It's a little extra entertainment for you. Okay, so now we have a pretty good idea of what all of those things do. We got the core stats. You've got effort, which is like the most core stat. Focus, which is more of a resource allocation stat. We've got the chakra, which give you your magic go-go juice. We've got aura, which keeps you safe. It's kind of a magic shield. We know what the skills do. We know what the clan and archetype are. So now we have a really good idea of what's going on here. This guy doesn't have a lot of worldly possessions, just being, an ex-monk. But we also have a weapon and armor here, and we have an effortless stat, and then of course we've teased the imbalances a few times. So let's get into all of that real quick. Effortless is usually used outside of combat, also used for defense. Outside of combat, it can be a little cumbersome to roll your effort and grab sets and what have you, especially whenever you only have one action you want to take. Like, hey, how fast can I balance on this balance beam as I run through it? Well, what you do there is you just look at your effortless. This is the rank of actions if you don't care to roll. So you have rank 1. So if you go back over here to the effects charts, you can just look and read what you can do without any effort whatsoever. No rolling dice, no magic, nothing. So yeah, you can walk a balance beam. Boom, right there. You can run at 12 miles an hour. You can dodge thrown punches. Even you can leap 6 feet, um, or 9 feet horizontally. So that's really good. So yeah, just as a character, this is a Lone Wolf Fist. You are in the peak of physical, mental, and spiritual health as a default. So you can do all kinds of great stuff with just effortless. But this is also modified again by your masteries. So in addition to that, if you look at his spirit, he has mastery of that. So that increases the rank by 1. Effortlessly, he has a rank of 2 in spirit. So if you look at the spirit chart, and spirit's a touch more esoteric than the physical stuff, but if you look at spirit, the rank 1 is like you have a vague sense of supernatural phenomena. You can sense elemental alignment. But as soon as you get to rank 2, you can directly observe spiritual phenomena. So this guy, just whenever he's wandering around, can not only sense things like ghosts by sight. So if it's invisible to a normal person, he can see it. He can even take a talisman and rebuke it without even rolling dice. He's just that spiritually aligned. So that's kind of nifty. And it allows you to play the game without having to futz with the somewhat more involved and decision heavy effort rolling. So that's what is going on with that. That's the design intent there, if you want to get fancy about it. Um, Weapons and armor. Armor simply reduces incoming damage by that much, so that's easy. Just whenever you roll your dice to defend, like, oh, this guy's attacking with a 20, I've got a 17, oh, but 18. That's it. It just directly adds to your number. So that's nice. His leather armor is not the best of armor. It's only going to mildly change things. And you'll see this consistently where like there's these really kind of deceptively small numbers and in a lot of things. That's because the first few rounds of this game are very important. Whether or not you take injuries in those rounds determines whether or not you will succeed in later rounds. So even small changes can be a big deal. Like they can manage a cutoff point between taking 9 health damage and being able to function just fine in later rounds, and 10 health levels of damage and having an imbalance for the rest of the fight, which can be very crippling, especially if you only have a small effort pool. So yeah, a lot of these small numbers, they seem small, but trust me, true believer, whenever you find them in play, they make a big difference because of when they're relevant. Okay. So let's move on. Now we've gotten pretty much all of that stuff. Oh, weapons. I don't want to miss the weapons. Even being unarmed is actually a weapon, by the way. So all the different weapons have different things that they do. Yeah, so this actually describes the type of weapon. In the core book, you'll see that they all have their own little special thing that they do. A lot of people are unarmed because it's a martial arts game. But sometimes you'll have a heavy weapon like a street sign with a chunk of concrete on it. Or you'll have a sword, which is a balanced weapon. You can't see a sword in this, which is too bad. He's got a really beastly sword. I really like what the artist did for this character. She is also unarmed, but has a lot of bad attitude, baby. Yeah, go nuke. Yeah, meat drinker or Mako Weedle. It's a balanced weapon. All right, so let's scoot on back up here. So all these different weapons have different game effects. For example, a balanced weapon, and these are things that you activate once per round. So a balanced weapon, like a sword, allows you to increase the rank of an attack by 1 every round. A defensive weapon allows you to increase the rank of a defense by 1 rank every round. And that's just in addition to anything else that attack does. So unarmed allows you to use single die attacks twice. So even if you get kind of a chump roll, like this is not an amazing offensive roll, but even if you got a chump roll like this is actually, it transforms it to something kind of deadly. So if you happen to go first, which is, by the way, you just roll a d10 and compare it, that's initiative. You can bid your initiative higher by using your dice here, but generally you'll just roll the d10. So if you happen to go fast and you are fighting and you're attacking before someone else, instead of being able to throw a single die at 17 and this 20 as a bonus, you can throw this single die as a 17 and this single die as a 13 and this 20, giving you 3 reasonably good sized attacks. In early rounds, that's an amazing offensive suite. And this is ignoring the fact that you can boost them up with Lightning Fist. So even though it doesn't look like that's a great role, even though this guy doesn't seem like a really powerful offensive character, he actually has an enormous amount of offense, even just with the Lightning Fist. And I'm not even getting into the rest of these techniques, which do unbelievable stuff. Because I want to talk about this one especially, and this one whenever we go to imbalances. But you'll note that just because since he has unarmed and he has more options with his dice, he's able to put out an incredible offensive tilt in that first round, even though it doesn't seem like he'd be able to. So that's pretty cool. And again, it's just about making clever use of your resources. So system mastery really does pay off, and it's not terribly complicated. As you can see, you can just look at your dice and look at what you can do and what options you have with them, and very quickly create a strategy on the fly. That's a design feature of this game. It makes it feel like you're in the driver's seat when it comes to having all this kung fu and using it in a split second way. This kind of gives it a game feel, a TTRPG game feel that's very similar to like Street Fighter or other fighting games, or Tekken. Tekken's another really good example there. I would say Virtual Fighter. I don't think anybody remembers Virtual Fighter, which was another great game. Um, Oh God, I can make a Tobal comparison too. I'm old. Never mind. I'm moving on from this. This is making me feel ancient. Okay, anyway, so that's what weapons do. So now we come on to imbalances, and this is kind of a meaty part of the system. So I wanted to dwell on. I want to give it its own little space to give you guys an idea of what's going. Like, what the hell? Why this? Why not just negative modifiers? Okay, well, first of all, this is kind of negative modifiers, but imbalances are a little meatier than that. An imbalance is meant to not only be like an injury, but to track the way that injuries work in the fiction that inspired this. So, an injury is never just an injury in a martial arts film or manga, or any fiction, any kind of fiction. If it's got like magic kung fu, an injury isn't just an injury. There's like a spiritual and psychological element to it as well. It's something that you kind of carry with you, and it becomes an element of the challenges that you face. There's a lot of one-armed swordsmen in in martial arts fiction that have to overcome that limitation to gain a new degree of power, and many of them are unbelievably powerful afterwards. But these aren't just wounds; they're an element of your character. That's why they're right front and center on the sheet. So, and they're part of your story too. The way you acquire that wound is through something happening in the game. And a rival gets a lucky blow or throws a curse on you. That stuff sticks around. You'll notice there's a lot of slots for them too. This is the rank of the imbalance. You just are going to write the rank there, and then a brief description of what the imbalance is, the name and the page number, or just a brief description of what they do. Some of them get very weird. Generally, what you will see, the general kind of imbalance you will get is from fighting. Once you fill up one of these health levels with damage, you get 10 damage, you mark an X through it, that creates a rank 1 imbalance generated by, or determined by, the enemy that wounded you. So, like, let's say somebody hits you with a sword, they get 10 damage. Okay. So that's a rank 1 imbalance. They decide they're tired of getting lightning fisted, so they are going to injure one of your arms with the sword. So they cut your arm, and it's bleeding, and the muscle's been cut, and the bone's been nicked by this ridiculous blow. Okay, so now you get a rank 1 imbalance. Initially, what that does during that round, whenever it's first created, is it removes your access to that arm. It's either your left arm or your right arm. In this case, it's going to be his right arm. I know it looks like the left, but it's stage left. Anyway, so his arm gets injured. He can no longer use his ability with unarmed to throw an additional attack, which kind of sucks. Well, I guess he could. He's got legs and a head, so he can do that. But he couldn't do it with his arm. He'd have to think of a descriptive way around it. And it's important to understand that these do manifest largely descriptively whenever you're taking what I call the dramatic imbalance, that the descriptive part of it that reduces your access to what kind of descriptions you can use in terms of your attacks and how you utilize your character descriptively. That is called a dramatic imbalance. Now, at the beginning of the round, you actually have an option to ignore that because you're a badass martial arts superhero, right? So he's like, you know what? I'm using my arm just like normal. Bite me. In that case, you take the rank of the imbalance, in this case 1, as a penalty somewhere, generally in your effort pool. So what that means is when you go to roll your effort, you're rolling one die less. So you can use your arm just normal, but now you've only got 3 dice to throw around. Still a pretty decent roll. Not amazing. You can't really do a lot of offense with 4s. That's, it's below the facing range of your lightning fist here. But like, yeah, so you still take some kind of penalty. And the higher that gets, the worse the penalty. So if they hit you again and they reduce even more, they can choose to increase the rank of that imbalance by 1. So every time you lose a health level, that pops open one of these by 1. Now, you can only have 3 physical imbalances. You'll notice there's more than that. Well, there's different kinds of imbalance. There's physical, there's emotional, and then there's spiritual. Spiritual are curses, and emotional are things like whenever they fill you with rage or sorrow or like confusion. Like that's what's going on with those. So you can only have 3 physical imbalances. So theoretically, he does another, rank of damage to you. He could injure your other arm equally or continue to injure the same arm, both of which could be bad. So, how do you get beaten in this game? If you lose all your health, you are taken out. You're either completely unconscious and dying, or you've just been thrashed totally unconscious and you're heavily injured. This is actually determined by your opponent when they take you out, so if they're feeling merciful, maybe they'll spare you, and if not, you're dispatched immediately. But if your imbalance ever reaches high enough, I've actually forgotten exactly what the number is there, but if it ever gets high enough, that also takes you out. Or alternatively, the opponent who creates that imbalance can remove that limb from you. So, like, if they get the imbalance high enough on your arm, they can just cut it right off. And in that case, it's no longer an imbalance, it's just missing from your sheet. You no longer have an arm. Uh-oh. Now, naturally, this is a game in which magic and robotic shenanigans can replace your arm. But in the short to medium term, that's a pretty significant deal. So that's what's going on with imbalances. Now, let's talk about the imbalances this guy can create. Because the reason I wanted to do Hero here is because Fist of the North Star was a huge inspiration for Lone Wolf Fist. I put Fists in the name, and that was the anime that I was trying to emulate. So this guy is my Kenshiro character in many ways. He's got the same techniques that I designed to be kind of the Kenshiro lights. So, pressure point strike. Okay, so this technique is a little bit different, you'll notice. First of all, it's not an attack type, it's a mudra, and it requires chakra, so it's more spiritual technique. The cost is higher, and the facing is any, so this pairs with any dice you roll. So let's say my arm was injured and I can't do my lightning strikes anymore, but it's round 2, I've got a ton of prana, and I just want to rip into this guy. So let's just roll these to rank 2, this rank 2 facing 4 here, 24. We'll increase that. By making another 4, making that a 34. That's not so bad. The effect is the big deal here. So what this does is it infuses a strike with harmful vibrations for this round, as long as it is maintained, and it may deal aggravation rather than damage with the attack. What's aggravation? Well, aggravation is kind of anti-health. You take damage to health, and it reduces the number in the box, right? Once it gets to 10, or I guess it increases the number in the box of damage. When it gets to 10, you exit out, and that creates an imbalance. But you can also directly influence imbalances. Aggravation is what you do with them. Every box in an imbalance, every rank, is 10 aggravation. So if you deal 10 damage to a rank 1 imbalance, it becomes a rank 2 imbalance. So you can target imbalances directly with techniques like this and other strategies. So, rather than damage, you deal aggravation. This aggravation may inflame a prana catastrophe imbalance. What the heck's a prana catastrophe imbalance? I'm glad you asked. This is the prana catastrophe imbalance. This is also how imbalances look whenever they are a little more complicated than I just described. So this is the imbalance that is created by many of the styles techniques. They tell you what type of imbalance they are. In this case, this is a physical imbalance, and they give you the name, and then they don't tell you how that manifests physically, because, I mean, obviously, physically, it's however you want it to manifest. Generally, they're going to lose dice unless this happens to them. But dramatically, it tells you what happens if they choose not to use the dice penalty. So, like, let's say you get them like a rank 2 imbalance. You really mess them up with this. So they can either lose 2 dice at the um, beginning of the round, or they can have this happen to them. And in this case, this absolutely eats. Your body's paralyzed. Your muscles are unresponsive lumps. Your limbs act like you're catatonic, remaining as they're posed by others. You can't take any action nor move. So this utterly paralyzes you. You're immobilized near to the spot, although you can still speak. This is something that happens in Fist of the North Star a lot. You can defend yourself, but you have to describe all your spastic floppy limbs and jerky movements, and this grants you a state called disadvantage. Disadvantage simply removes, or actually it increases your opponent's attacks by 1 rank. So that sucks. You don't want this to happen to you. Also, if the rank of this imbalance exceeds your remaining, I'm gonna change that real quick. There we go. Health levels. Then you suffer explosive organ failure and die at the end of this round in a shower of blood and rupturing organs. So, yeah, you paralyze them and then they explode. So clearly, you don't want to take the dramatic penalty to that. So you're very incentivized to take the effort penalty. So they're going to suck off 2 dice from their effort every round so they can move. But if you hit them hard enough with that and long enough, then they will explode. So that's kind of insane, right? Also, you'll notice that the dramatic ability freezes them up right away. So in the round in which you get this to a rank 1 imbalance, that's what happens to them. They can't move. They have to wait until the start of the next round before they can take actions, and only at a penalty. That is incredibly powerful, and it gives you a very strong reason not to mess with this guy, because he can both paralyze you and eventually make you blow up as like his core power. Again, this is what Kenshiro does. But there's a reason that this guy's clan was more or less completely wiped out. You're looking at the last of the 5-star spirits. By the way, every character at your table who decides to go with the 5-star spirits is the last of the 5-star spirits. Their clan's more or less extinct. I mean, obviously, there's a couple of cases that that's not going on, but yeah. So there's a couple other fun things about this one. It's a spirit increasing skill. So this would also benefit from your spirit mastery. So if you decide to use this to increase your spirit, you can actually get pretty high results. At the beginning of the game, going to a rank 4 or higher is kind of great. You can see into the spirit world. You can sense distant events, as though they were prophecy. You can summon spirits. You can even interface with spiritual technology, like the Kaufu technology. All useful stuff to happen, by the way. So this guy's got all kinds of cool spirit stuff he can do with this. The other thing that I really like is that this technique has a keyword, sustainable, and this kind of gives you an idea of what that means. It can be sustained in a focus slot. So if on your very first round you're like, I want this to apply to basically any of my attacks, you can just use your focus slot to sustain it. So anytime you want to like poke somebody with additional aggravation with any of your attacks, you just can. You sustain the use of this technique, and it just keeps getting worse. Basically, all of your attacks now have this kind of underlying threat to them, where we can create this prana catastrophe imbalance. So that's flippin' fantastic. So I left that one for the end because it's one of the most complicated ideas in the game. It's also one of the most powerful and sexiest things you can do in the game, is messing with imbalances. So that is, in a nutshell, how characters work in this game and how fighting works in this game. I hope you found this very informative, and I'm going to go ahead and let you go and find other ways to advertise and bring more people into the next Kickstarter, which I've just described all this stuff to you. The Kickstarter is Acid and Steel. It gives you access to, in addition to these human characters, demonic characters called damned heroes, and robotic characters called artificial heroes. So they even have more cool stuff they can do. But I'll get into that in a later video. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.